Hey, before we dive in, if you're a new business owner who still doesn't have a website yet, I made something for you. It's a free 15-page guide that walks you through exactly what you need to launch your first website, what to skip, what actually matters, and the 5 steps to go from 0 to live. No coding, no big budget, no perfection required. Plus, you'll get 20% off my Show It templates inside and a free website trial. It's completely free and waiting for you at elizabethmccravy.com/first. That link is also in the show notes. Okay, now let's get to the episode. I want to tell you about the morning I found out I was pregnant in a hotel room in Arizona about 2 hours before I walked on stage in front of hundreds of people. That is just one of the pinch me moments I'm sharing today. So 10 years ago this month, I started this business as a brand new newlywed with a graphic design degree, new to Nashville, Tennessee, and absolutely no idea what I was doing. And now 10 years later, I want to take you on a little memory lane trip through some of my biggest pinch me moments from this decade. This is so fun for me personally to reminisce, and I think there's lots of lessons for you in what I'm sharing too. So if you're new here, I'm Elizabeth McCravy. I've gone from doing custom client work to selling mugs on Etsy to website templates and online courses. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, this podcast that has 333 episodes now has happened too. I'm a mom to 3 kids, 4 and under, a wife to my husband, Adam, who you'll hear about too in some of these stories, and a Christian who loves to talk about faith, which actually also comes up in one of these moments I'm sharing today. So these are all moments I'll never forget. Some of them I've never talked about publicly. Some of them, if you're a longtime podcast listener, you may have heard me mentioned or like been a witness to happening. And some of them still make me emotional. And at least one of them involves Sarah Blakely. So I have 14 moments to share, no particular order. I'm definitely forgetting some, but these are the 14 that came to mind when I thought about okay, pinch me moments, things I'll never forget in my business journey so far. So let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravy, educator for business owners, website designer, and your host of the Breakthrough Brand podcast. I'm a Christian, wife to my high school sweetheart, and mom to 3 sweet little kids. So yes, I record a lot of these episodes during nap time. On this podcast, I pull back the curtain on what it actually takes to build a successful, sustainable business, not the hustle till you drop version you hear about online. I've been a business owner since 2016, and I'm here to tell you this. You can build a business you love without burning out, sacrificing time with your family, or working 40 hours a week. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, with an honest look at the realities of motherhood, entrepreneurship, and navigating both with faith and purpose. You'll hear episodes on marketing, website design, podcast strategy, time management, and scalable income, while also talking about mom life, faith, and personal growth. If you want your business to feel purposeful, profitable, and aligned with your life, not the other way around, you're in the right place. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Okay, so like I said, these are 14 pinch me moments from the last decade in business. And to define pinch me, these are like true moments that happen. So obviously things like starting my template shop or starting this podcast or various retreats and events I've been to are all really yes, those are amazing moments in my business. But these are visceral, times something happened that I'll just never forget. And that's where I get the idea of pinch me. And the last one I'm going to share is one that's I'm still pinching myself over literally today as I'm recording this podcast. So anyway, let's get into it. No particular order. So walk down memory lane with me with some lessons along the way. So my first pinch me moment I want to share. The first time I ever made a template sale while I was not working and while I was instead sleeping. And that is truly and this was many years ago, y'all. I've had my template shop a long time. This was in 2018, but I'll never forget it. So pretty quickly after launching my template shop, so it was around 2018, 7 years ago now, it was actually my birthday weekend, and my husband, Adam, and I were in Atlanta visiting his family. That's how the trip lined up. It was my birthday weekend, not my actual birthday, but the weekend of my birthday. And I still remember waking up in my in-laws guest room and looking at my phone and seeing a text notification, because back then I did sales notifications via text. I set that up in Zapier, however you want to call it. And I would get a text on my phone every time someone bought from me. Now I get a Slack push notification every time, but back then it was texting. So anyway, I wake up and look at my phone, and someone in Hawaii had bought a template while I was sleeping. Her name is Sloan. Again, still remember that. Don't even need to look back at old emails and stuff to remember that. Her name is Sloan. And she's bought more templates since then. And it has been a longtime affiliate and customer. And she may even listen to this episode. Hello, Sloan, if you do. But I still remember her buying and me being like, oh my gosh, this is insane. I don't know this person, first of all. I had not talked to her previously, but that is insane that I was sleeping and made money. It truly is the craziest, really awesome feeling. And what a great little birthday gift that was too. And just a really sweet memory. So first time I ever made a template sale while I was not working and in particular sleeping. Okay. Second pinch me moment. This one I alluded to just now in the intro, but finding out I was pregnant with my daughter, Sophia, at Show It Spark Conference. So this was not that long ago. In 2024, end of the year in November, I spoke at Show It Spark Conference for designers in Arizona. And you're going to hear about that event again in a moment because it was truly a highlight of my entire career. Just so many sweet moments from that conference. But the morning I was going to speak, I woke up crazy early because of the time change. And I had a lot of time to kill before the first session started and even more time before my event. And so I got tired of practicing my presentation. And so I took a pregnancy test, which again, I know is so random. When I've shared this story, I remember the first time I shared it on my podcast thing, I got some people be like, wait, what? You didn't fully explain this. Why did you have a pregnancy test? Did you just go to CVS or Walgreens and buy one? What? So no, I actually had 2 pregnancy tests in my toiletry bag. And they'd honestly been in there a while. I did not intentionally pack them, but I had 2 in there. So anyway, I just kind of had a feeling. It's really odd. I was not expecting to be pregnant, but at the same time I had a feeling and was again kind of bored and took one on a whim, and it was indeed positive. And I just about lost my mind with excitement, with a stress, if I'm being honest, because Ethan, my second, was only 8 months old at the time. It was my second time actually leaving him for a work trip 2 times that month. And I felt very much like postpartum still after my C-section with him. And I could just not believe that I was already pregnant again. And so I went on that day to compartmentalize a lot and do my presentation, which that in itself was a pinch me moment, that whole experience of presenting on affiliate marketing among all these incredible designers with some of my favorite people from Show It. And so I told 2 of my girlfriends via text after I found out, but I wanted to wait to tell Adam in person when I got home from that work trip. But there was just something so special about finding out I was pregnant at that event specifically in a place I love so much with people I love from Show It, all these incredible designers I love, and then walking on a stage and teaching, knowing that my third and probably my last baby was in my stomach, and then later finding out she was a girl. It was just very, very surreal. And even then I had a weird feeling that she might've been a girl. Again, a story for another day. But now Sophia, my daughter, is 8 months old. She's my girl. She's my home birth baby. She's my VBAC baby, home birth after a C-section. And every time with my 3 kids, I found out I was pregnant. It was so special and memorable and unique. But that trip and the ties both to my business of finding out on a really highlight business moment of speaking at this event and meeting so many other designers. And then also it being my last baby, my daughter, it was just boom, so incredible. Again, a highlight of my life and a highlight of my business, and such a crazy, crazy story I'll never forget. Okay, and now this third pinch me moment. If there was a number 1, I know I said these are in no particular order, and they are not, but if there was going to be a number 1, this would perhaps be it. So the thing is, having multiple podcast listeners and course students either become Christians or find their faith again or become curious about faith from this show and from other content I've made. So I'm not a ministry. I'm not a minister. I run a business. And in fact, I don't even sell faith-related products. You guys know this if you've been around a while, but I sell courses and templates and I teach business. However, I have used this podcast platform over the years to talk about my faith in God. I've just felt led that way. It felt very natural to me and also felt like what God was telling me to do. And I did all that knowing it had nothing to do directly with the things I sell, and also knowing that not everyone who follows me or this podcast wants to hear that type of content, and just holding those things to be true and deciding to do it anyway and take the risk of even diluting some of my business content by talking about faith and just letting it be what it is. And God has used that in very, very special ways that, again, I feel like when I look back at 10 years, if nothing else good came of this business, this eternal kingdom thing of these specific people coming to know Jesus through this this content, this podcast, it could tear up, is like worth it if nothing else ever happened. But many times in my years as a podcaster, I've had many times where I have had people tell me that this podcast led them to be faith curious, to be like curious about their faith in God. And they either became a Christian or reclaimed their faith in God after they had stopped believing in God at some point, or just even had like, maybe they still are not a Christian, but they have a different perspective on Christians than they did prior to this podcast. I had a situation in particular last year that, again, feels like a business highlight, and perhaps you'll listen to this episode, but I got to have like almost a 2-hour phone conversation with someone to answer her questions about God and talk to her about faith and pray with her. And again, what a gift and privilege that was. And that never would have happened if it wasn't for my business, because she and I connected through her being a student and a podcast listener. And you guys who have had that experience and have messaged me, or we've had phone calls or long DM conversations, you know who you are. And I just want you to know that those messages with you, the emailing, the phone calls, all of it is meaningful to me in ways I will never be able to put into words. And I love that God used me and this podcast to reach you. It is a blessing in my life for that to be true, and a highlight of my business journey. And I don't have this in my notes, but if you're someone listening who you felt God calling you to use the platform you've built, your business, even though you're not a ministry, to share your faith, do it. If you feel God calling you to do that, it's for a reason, do it. And you don't know who God is trying to reach through you. And that's, again, what I'm saying. In these 10 years, like, God has used this podcast, my courses, all of it, to reach people. And God may want to use you in that way, in addition to using your business in the other ways he'll use it. So, okay, that's a super, super big highlight. Okay, number 4, bringing it back to Spark, bringing it back to Show It. Things you guys are going to see a trend in some of these highlights that Show It comes up a lot. Show It, which is the website builder I use. That's what my templates work with. But Show It's been a huge, huge, huge part of my business in these 10 years, both the people at Show It, the platform, the events they've thrown, all of it. But this one is a Show It related one again. So the business meetup I hosted for the Breakthrough Brand podcast at the Spark conference. So at that event where I found out I was pregnant with Sophia, where I got to speak about affiliate marketing, I also hosted an event for course students and podcast listeners while I was there. Many of you listening may have been there. It was just during the lunch break hour on the day after I found out I was pregnant, actually. And we all had lunch together. We got to hang out. It was very casual, just at like a restaurant brewery there. But truly a highlight of my entire career. Again, like, sometimes things that like felt hard to pull off, that's literally just you talking to people, can be the highlight of your whole career so far. But meeting so many of you in real life that I've known online, that I've been on, coaching calls with, who I've seen your website built with my templates, like those types of things, hugging in person, it truly like filled up my soul, truly. And I wish I could do meetings like that with people like every month or something, because it really does make what can feel so abstract when you're doing things alone in business feel real to me in person. Like right now, I am recording this episode alone in my office. And then later today, I'm going to connect with some booked out designer students on a coaching call, because we have a group coaching call today on the day I'm recording this. But like, that's all through the computer. So like, getting to be in person together at an event like Spark, and then getting to just have a meetup where it's like all these people together. Again, just such a huge highlight. So that was really, really special for me. It's the only time in my business I've done something like that too, like hosted like a meetup. So that was really cool. Okay, number 5, I mentioned this in the intro, but Sarah Blakely posting a photo with one of my coffee mugs designed for my Etsy shop. So this actually was a pinch me moment that happened many times for a while, because she kept reposting the photo. So Sarah Blakely, she's the founder and CEO, billionaire of the company Spanx. I adore her. She's a very influential entrepreneur. She's a mother. She's a wife to Jesse Itzler. Anyway, she's just an incredible person. If you don't know who I'm talking about, look her up. But she does a series on her Instagram called Mugshot Monday, where she takes a photo with a mug with a cool, like funny or inspirational type quote on it. And then she usually will have some kind of caption to go along with it. But back when I had my Etsy shop, I actually don't operate my Etsy shop currently. I have it on pause because it was starting to not make sense with my business right now, 10 years in. But at this point in my business, I cannot even remember what year this was. Like Need some extra pages to improve or add on to your Show It website, but you're not in the market for an entirely new template. Been there. Sometimes you just need a little extra help to save you time as you add new things to your website as your business grows. That's why I put a huge focus on creating Show It add-on templates to meet your needs, including tons of add-ons that you won't find in any other template shop. From pages to promote yourself as a conference speaker, to pages to house information about your podcast, add-on templates to help you build a quiz lead magnet, favorite things pages, Instagram link in bio so you can ditch that Linktree subscription, and so much more. Head to elizabethmccravey.com/shop to see them all. There are so many more than what I just named, and you can even bundle them together to save more. But as a podcast listener, you can also use the code BBPOD to save an additional 15% off on your add-on or full site template purchase for a limited time. If you are hearing this ad right now, that means the deal is available. So go shop now using the code BBPOD. 2019, 2020, something like that. I don't know. It was a while ago. And I had an active Etsy shop that was just coffee mugs, mostly with fun quotes. I designed them as a graphic designer. They were drop ship, but someone who worked at Spanx with Sarah Blakely bought her one of my Etsy mugs as a gift. And I knew that someone who worked at Spanx bought a mug from me because I remember entering in the shipping details and it being that I'm shipping this mug to the Spanx headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. But then I did not realize until it showed up on my Instagram feed and I was tagged in the post that it was literally a gift for Sarah Blakely herself. So the mug, and I'll be sure to post the photo of this on my Instagram this week when this airs and also in the blog post for this episode. So if you want to see the photo of Sarah Blakely with my mug, go to elizabethmccravey.com/333 for the number of this episode. So I'll post that there. But the mug says, "Be the CEO your parents always wanted you to marry." So that's the quote. I think I read that somewhere forever ago and decided to put it on a coffee mug. And so she had a really beautifully written caption with it about like her experience getting married later in life after building her company. And I loved what she shared. I also got to message a little bit on Instagram with the Sarah Blakely because of this, which again is very much a pinch me moment as well, that we got to like DM with each other. And she tagged me in the post, which was so generous. She both tagged me and then wrote in the caption, mug from Elizabeth McCravey. And I got so many sales every time she would post this, like actually an unmanageable amount of sales on my Etsy shop. I remember the first time I was like, wow, my little tiny side hustle Etsy shop is not set up well from an infrastructure perspective for this many sales all at once on the same coffee mug. And then I also gained a lot of new followers who were all women interested in business, which felt so fun and relevant. And so anyway, it was also just so cool to see her with something that I dreamed up and created and designed myself. So big pinch me moment. Again, it happened like 4 or 5 times because she kept reposting every time I'd get this big influx of sales and get that sweet tag from her on my feed. So I'll post that if y'all want to see it. And maybe some of you guys listening also have that mug because again, I feel like it became like a trendy thing to get it after she did. Okay. Number 6. This one feels a little vulnerable and also funny to share, perhaps. This is another time Show It is coming up in this highlight list. Like I said, we're going to hear about Show It a few times. But in 2019, I went to my first Show It event ever. Again, I've been to many events with Show It since then. And that was back when Show It had the United conference. But it was truly one of the best events of my life. And I still remember the specific story. This is the pinch me moment. At one of the evening parties, I think it was after the first day of the event, I went up to the CEO of Show It, who was just casually there at like all the stuff. I was not expecting that. I was expecting him to be like kind of off somewhere in his own, but he was just there interacting with all the mainly photographers and also some designers. Again, this was the event United that Show It used to throw. But I went up to him and introduced myself very nervously. And I was like, yeah, I got to make sure I meet him at this event. And so I go up and introduce myself only for him to already tell me that he knew who I was and was excited to meet me and knew I was one of their Show It designers. So it was just such a cool and special moment. And now knowing Todd longer, he is someone I've been around many times on other Show It trips I've got to go on, even events I've been at their headquarters. I even got to beat him, yes, in a game of Settlers of Catan. Last time I was in Arizona, right before actually on that trip that I found I was pregnant with Sophia, but on another trip before that, got to play Catan and won. Very, very fun. But seriously, like that was such a huge pinch me moment. And Todd is just so great at what he does. And that was my first time, interacting with him at one of these events. And I immediately immediately noticed like, oh, he does things differently than what I would expect the CEO of a software company to do. And that's because he does just actually run his business differently. And he is so people focused, community focused. Yeah, he's just excellent what he does. And even though my company is obviously so different from Show It, I have learned so much in the way I run my business from watching him run his, and also from the various things he's taught us at designer experience events for Show It. Those are called DXP. If you're a show designer, you may have heard of those or potentially been on a trip, but he often like has taught at those. And so, yeah, I've just learned a lot from him, but that like meeting him and then also being surprised in the meeting of him, I guess you could say, and was really, really special. And at that same event, at that same United conference, I was also extremely surprised because I won the Show-A-Tier of the Year award. And I didn't even know that was the thing. I showed up at this conference for the first time, having no idea what to expect, first Show It event, and got to win that award. And that was really, really cool as well. So that whole event too, again, Show It events, showing up as a highlight for me. If you've never been to Spark or any other Show It events, I would highly recommend it if you're a designer. But anyway, huge business highlight for me. Okay, seventh business highlight I want to share. So speaking at my college. So ever since I started my business, it was a dream of mine to speak at my college or high school. And it's not because I went to some fancy high school or college where it's like super cool to get to speak there. They do all these big events. Like it was not Harvard, okay? I went to a very normal high school and college, but I wanted to speak, and I like saw that as like a dream and a goal of mine because I wanted to get to be the voice I wish I'd heard about careers in design and creativity and entrepreneurship back when I was that age. So like, for example, in high school for me, back, this many, many years ago now, but like the option of business and creative fields were wildly underrepresented when we would have events or conversations about like, what could you go study in college? I actually still remember as a senior in high school, my guidance counselor trying to push me towards nursing as my college major over graphic design for the purpose of stability. So like, it was just like not a thing really as much like represented to hear about like the creative fields and even like the entrepreneurial fields where I went to school. So in 2019, which I'm realizing I have a lot of highlights from that particular time in my business, which that was really like a sweet few years in business. But in 2019, one of my favorite college professors ever asked me to come back and speak at an event they were having. That was kind of like a job fair type thing. And there were other graduates speaking, some who were entrepreneurs and some who like worked different careers in like design and media. And they were coming to just all talk about like, hey, here's like what you can actually do after you graduate. And so I said, heck yes. I worked really hard on my presentation. I did a Q&A after, had a PowerPoint. I was just in some like random like stadium type seating classroom at the school. I got to hang out with a lot of the students in my former department after, who made me feel both old and young at the same time. And both my parents actually came to watch me speak along with my husband, Adam. And that was really cool because that was the only time that either of them got to hear me speak at an event. And my dad passed away the year after that. So it was cool that he got to like hear me talk about my business journey and all that like in person at something before passing away. So really significant time there for me. And it was just really fun. I don't know how to describe it. It was just fun. It felt again, like full circle in some ways, getting to like share about like, hey, you actually have this other option, not go work a 9-to-5 and to start your own thing. And here's what that could look like. Okay, so number 8, continuing on the Show It trend, the year of 2020, right before the pandemic hit, I got to go to Cabo, Mexico with the top Show It designers and some of the Show It team. And it was like a brand trip vibe sort of thing. They were actually testing out the concept for what is now DXP, which is hosted at the Show It headquarters in Arizona. And DXP stands for Designer Experience. And so again, it was just a pinch me moment of so much fun. So I made friendships with other designers who I so look up to and admire. I learned things that helped me grow my business, both through like structured things Show It did with us on that trip, and also through just like conversations by the pool with a drink where we're all just talking about like, hey, here's what's working. Here's what's not working. Oh, I do this thing in my business. Here's what it was like hiring for me. Here's what my most recent template launch was like. It's just super, super interesting. We also got to do cool things. Like we did like a yacht boat expedition, and we got to, again, like sit by the pool and have drinks. It was like an all-inclusive resort. We filmed content for Show It around why you should consider Show It as a website designer, and got to like brainstorm ideas with them. But it was just a really, again, great time all around. around and such a memorable experience. And I would add with that, since then, I've gone on many, I don't even know how many, like 4 or 5 DXP trips in Arizona with the Show It team after this one. And those have all been highlights themselves as well of just like big pinch me moments. I'm getting to go on a cool trip like this as a business owner, and also all the other designers I've gotten to hang out with and meet and swap ideas with and just enjoy the company of it. Those trips have been really, really fun. Okay, number 9. This is perhaps the craziest day of my entire business ever. I truly think so. Pinch me moment, this particular day, craziest day I've ever lived in my business. So my course, Booked Out Designer, that I already mentioned earlier, because I have a coaching call with those students in a few hours, but I launched it as a beta offer originally, meaning I had not made the whole course yet, but I was going to sell it at a discount to a limited number of spots and then make it as I went along with a promised date that it would be done by. So like, hey, here's one module so far. I'm going to have it done by this date, and you're going to get to like help me with ideas and stuff while I'm making the course. And I did good promoting leading up to it. And then I opened the doors for the beta offer. And again, with limited spots, it was 30 spots. That was the amount. So I'm like, I'm welcoming 30 students. I'm thinking I have a whole week, and I'm going to hopefully fill all 30 spots at this discounted rate during this week. I did not know what I was expecting. I guess I was, like I said, expecting to take a whole week. I had a whole like launch plan, podcast episodes. I have a podcast episode I literally never aired that was going to come out the second day of this launch week. But what ultimately happened instead was that it sold out and went over the 30 spots before I could even turn the checkoff off, within 1 hour. Okay. 1 hour, sold out, 39 spots. And most of those sales, this is why I say I didn't like turn it off quickly enough. Most of those sales, like the 30 spots, happened in the first 10 minutes of me opening the doors. Again, I had an entire launch week planned, had podcast episodes, Instagram posts, emails, all that planned to do, but didn't do any of it because it sold out within an hour. And again, ended up with 39 students. And if you want to hear the podcast episode, I'm actually looking at the link to it right now. I'll link to it in the show notes, but episode 114 of the podcast is the behind the scenes of my multiple 5-figure launch, where the course sold out in an hour. So the beta launch, and I talk back then, this was like really quickly after it happened. I shared all the details. So if you want to go listen to that 114 of this podcast, but that day, just to share like blunt numbers with you now, I made $39,000, all cash in, no payment plans, just actually $39,000. There were no ad costs involved. So it was just like, no, it's not that I spent $20,000 on ads and made 39. Like, no, it was just 39,000. All got fulfilled because there were no payment plans, just cash in, which again was literally insane. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And this was, that amount was slightly less than a year's salary for me at my first job. So like it felt unreal to me that like an hour passed and I made that much money, but then it would have taken me a whole year at my first job as a designer to earn that much. And obviously, I had to make the course after that. And that course was many, 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 many hours of work for me. So I'm not trying to say it was like you did one thing in an hour and then you made almost $40,000. Like, no, it was a lot of work. I ended up doing both before and after that. And it was a really well promoted course that people really wanted, and were excited about, which I love. And I loved the excitement about that. But it was just such an unreal day. And so that day too, I was also newly pregnant then with my first baby, Colin. I was about 12 weeks along, and I was actually waiting till I got through the course launch to like do my little announcement post on Instagram and share with people that I was pregnant. And so I'm, kind of close to being out of that first trimester then when I did this launch. And I still so vividly remember that night going out to dinner with my husband, Adam, to celebrate at our fave, like casual Mexican restaurant, and having a lot of cheese dip and enchiladas, my favorite enchiladas from my favorite Mexican restaurant, with a lot of cheese dip and chips. And then just, a nice glass of water. I don't even think I got a mocktail, but then just really celebrating and feeling so excited and grateful, and also just like shook. Like, I feel like that's the best way I can describe it. I was like, I cannot believe that just happened. Like, what is life? And so, yeah, big pinch me moment. And perhaps, like I said, perhaps the craziest day of my business ever. And, those 39 students, like, so many of them I still keep in touch with. They like got huge wins from the Booked Out Designer course. Many of them have been on my podcast now and are running super successful businesses themselves from things they learned in the course and just being awesome at business. So anyway, very, very awesome moment. Okay, 10th pinch me moment, and this is something that is more of like a lot of moments put into one, but meeting people in person who listen to this podcast, our students, our template customers, just randomly in real life. So this is obviously a fun thing at a conference or something, but in those moments, you're expecting to see people who maybe you know online because you listen to their podcast or you've bought their course, or maybe they know you and you're like expecting that sort of situation. But it's especially cool when you're just like at lunch with your family, or you're at the zoo, or you're at church, or at a party, or a baby shower, or wherever it is, and someone says like, hey, I know you and I listened to your podcast, or hi, I'm a booked out designer student and my name is so-and-so and we were on a call with each other like, last week and now we're meeting in person. I actually had one instance a few years ago where I met someone at a party and she thought my voice sounded familiar to her. And then I'm like, we tried to figure out like how my voice could be familiar, and she had never listened to my podcast. Okay. So I was like, oh, I have a podcast. She's like, no, I've never listened to that. But then quickly realized she had been listening to me interviewed on someone else's podcast earlier that day, like on the drive to this party. So just like crazy moments like that are really fun. And I've had other times randomly where, like I said, like actually last summer when I was at the zoo, I met a podcast listener who came up to me and introduced herself. I've had other places around Nashville that I frequent where I will run into people and someone will say, hey, like I'm, so I listened to your podcast. And really, it's just the best. And especially with podcast listeners specifically, I would say it can make the work of the podcast feel more meaningful to me, because it is like, I don't know who's on the other end of like listening to this in your AirPods or playing in your kitchen right now, or, listening in your car, like whatever it is. You don't get to know as easily. So it makes like the work of it feel really significant in a lot of ways to like talk to someone and hear them say like, oh, I really love this episode, or I've been listening this long, or, whatever it is. It's just really, really cool. Okay. 11th thing, 11th pitch me moment. And this again encompasses like 3 times actually, but it would be that I've taken good maternity leaves every time I've had a baby as an entrepreneur. So in the 10 years of my business, I've had 3 babies and 3 maternity leaves, and I'm extremely grateful. And it feels very pinch me that I've gotten to have those leaves when I know that, especially in America, it's extremely normal for women to get just like 6 to 12 weeks maternity leave, and for men to get nothing, or maybe like 1 to 2 weeks, which that's a whole different conversation. I find lots of problems with this, and I hope our world and the U.S. economy will change to value giving parents paid parental leave that is more than 12 weeks. That's something I would love to see. But as a business owner, it can go either way. Like either maybe you can take more leave because you control your own schedule and your own business finances, or often we see too that like, that's like the standard for like in the U.S. when you work a 9 to 5, but it can be even worse sometimes for business owners because you like, you got to work to make the money, and there's no one like helping you get to have the paid time off where you're getting paid even when you're not working. So taking time away is very, very negative, and paid leave can actually be harder in some ways. So all that being true, I'm just grateful as a mother to have been able to take really significant time off with all 3 of my babies. And again, the time off, that's just kind of the difference between working a 9 to 5 versus being an entrepreneur. Like every maternity leave, I have worked during my maternity leave, but it's different than like leaving my baby at a daycare and having to go work in an office, at 6 weeks postpartum or something. It's more like, I've had with my first like Black Friday fell during my maternity leave with him. So I ran that cell, but then went back to like time off, things like that. So anyway, I've taken so much time though of maternity leaves between these 3 babies. And I just feel really grateful for that. And also grateful with that. It feels pinch me to be able to like ease back into work every time. Like right now, in some ways, I still feel like I'm a little bit on maternity leave with Sophia, even though she's 8 months old, because I have not gone back to working at the capacity I would otherwise. And because she doesn't take a bottle and is exclusively nursing, plus obviously having solids at 8 months now. But like I'm with her the majority of the time because of that and because I want to be. So it's just really cool and very much pinch me, and something I feel grateful to my business for. Number 12, something else I feel very grateful and pinch me, but starting a real estate business from the money from this business. So some of you who have listened to this podcast a while may know this, and I've actually done maybe 4 total episodes about real estate investing on this podcast. Definitely worth listening to. You can search my blog and type in the word real estate, and you'll be able to find those episodes. I'll link to them in the show notes as well. But my husband, Adam, and I have a real estate side hustle, and we own 5 properties, mostly in Middle Tennessee, 1 in Alabama. and we self-manage. And I say we, but Adam actually self-manages them all. And I wish I could say I helped more with that aspect, but he is amazing and truly does it all. Like he runs his amazing counseling practice and then also runs our real estate business. And it is a pinch me thing though, because we mostly funded the business with money from this business, which is cool. And something I feel grateful that I talked about this last week with the idea of like lifestyle creep, but instead of just like having lifestyle creep, when my business has made more money, investing it in something that now is another business that makes money for our family and has assets that will continue to increase in value over time, and something that now even we get to involve our kids in. Like just this weekend, we have a property that the tenants are moving out and we're looking for new tenants, and Adam took Colin with him to the showings and like got to show him what it's like to like do a house showing for 3 different people who are like interested in potentially renting this property. While I hung back with Sophia and Ethan. So it's just really cool and something that feels fun as a parent to be able to like involve our kids in. Okay, now I have 2 more left, 13 and 14. Okay, so number 13, speaking at Christy Wright's Business Boutique Conference in 2018. Again, I have so many from like that early years of my business, you could say. But this was such a pinch me moment because it was both my first speaking engagement as a business owner and also my biggest speaking engagement still to this day, which I don't do a ton of public speaking at conferences because it doesn't fit into my life as a mom and as someone who doesn't want to travel a ton for work. So like I don't do a lot of conference speaking. And this was actually ironically local to me. And again, the biggest one I've done, but this still 10 years in, biggest thing I've done and truly such a highlight of my business journey so far. So it was over 3,000 women there at this huge like conference stadium space. And it was not a keynote or anything. It was a live Q&A panel with Christy, who's the conference host. And then my friend, Amy Gabriel, who we met through this experience and still keep in touch today, but she founded the company Lippy Clip. It was like a panel where Christy was asking me and Amy both questions about our business. I think it was called the Success Stories panel. And so both of us were like interviewed together. And I remember we were both pretty nervous and we were both super prepped for it. And they had given us like the team for the conference had given us questions ahead of time. And I was prepped. I was like, I've got like my practiced answer ready to go for all these questions I know I'm going to be asked. And like, I'm ready. And then when like the event's happening, 3,000 women in the audience, the questions were completely different. So it ended up being like, I had all these really well-rehearsed answers, but then it actually was like me and Amy both just like thinking on our feet. And I love, like I have the full thing recorded, and I've been able to watch it since. I've shared clips of it on social media, but like all the things I said, I love what I shared, from the stage that was just like off the cuff after feeling so super prepped. But it was just a really cool experience. And I connected to some women at that event who followed along with my company since then, like from that moment, and have since become podcast listeners, students, and friends. And it was a really great like exposure moment early on in my business that I think helped propel me forward in a lot of ways early on. Again, I remember like getting off the stage and going back and looking at my phone at some point later and like my follower growth. I have no idea this many years later, like I can't remember how much, but it was like people like sat in the audience, heard me talk and joined my email list, followed on Instagram, went to my template shop. I didn't have my podcast yet at that point, but like, just really cool pinch me moment. Okay. Now the last one. And again, like I said, I know I'm forgetting stuff and I've already thought of a few things that I could mention that I'm not going to like add on because I'm going to keep it at 14, like the title says. And like I said in the intro, but there are a lot of other moments too, that are highlights for this many years in business. So the last one I want to share though, it's a current situation one, and it's not a cool speaking event or an award or someone talking to me and telling me how my business helped them, but it is much more simple than that. And it is the kind of thing that is not on a traditional highlight reel and that is truly like the unseen moments that like no one sees. So I'm not even sharing them on social media. It's just me and my family. But the pinch me moment, the way I define it is that my life right now, that I get to mainly stay home with my kids while my business still runs, and get to like be in that stay-at-home mom role more, which truly feels like a dream to me. And I think when I was a new mom, 4.5 years ago now, if someone would have told me that with how my business required a lot more of me back then, someone told me that I could get to like mostly stay home with my kids while still running and maintaining my business and getting to like step back some while stepping forward into something new and also just shifting, evolving. I don't know if I would have believed that both could be true, because I remember as a new mom specifically, going back and forth between like work and caring for a baby was really, really challenging. I was also very exhausted, and like the time constraints of being a new mom was just a lot. And so now though, for this season, it's like, here I am, which I know like seasons as a parent are often so short. And that's been helpful for me to remember, not in like a scarcity way. You know, we see all that stuff online of like, you get 18 summers with them or whatever. I'm not talking like that. I'm talking more of like, from the perspective of like making a decision to step into something fully. But like seasons are short. Like right now, my youngest is 8 months old. My oldest is 4.5 years old. And it is really a short period of years where they are all under like the school aged age. And I know each period changes and requires different things of you. And I don't even know what it's like to enter that next season of motherhood. But right now, for this particular season, I would say defined by like Sophia's age more than anything. But right now I'm working 1 day a week. That day is today as I'm chatting with you. And I'm with my kids the rest of the time as their primary caregiver. And our schedule feels complicated at times. Even the way I just explained that is like oversimplifies the way the schedule kind of runs for each day. But this feels like my dream. Like motherhood and family life is my dream, even more than having a successful business is. And I feel so extremely grateful. And it is the pinch me moment of all pinch me moments, that I get to do both, and that I have the blessing of the business I've spent so many years building that now helps fuel getting to be like on it with raising my kids and focusing so heavily on that. I don't know if any of that makes sense. I probably phrased some of that poorly, but that would be the final pinch me moment to share. So anyway, I hope it was enjoyable for you to walk down memory lane with me, and thank you for letting me share some of these like situations, many of which I haven't talked about before, but getting to share them with you was really fun today. And I hope you gleaned some learning moments for yourself about your own business and your own life and the way you're building things from this episode. And if you missed the episodes prior to this one, I would say go back. I'm doing like a whole series that's focused on things learned, lessons, and tips from 10 years. And this was like a continuation of that. But last week and the week before, I talked about lessons learned and what I wish I could go back and tell myself on day one. And next week, I'm going to continue this series talking about, honestly, what I was just alluding to a little bit, but about motherhood and business is the kind of final episode in this series. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and thank you for being a part of this business in some capacity, whether you started listening today to the podcast or you've been listening a long time, but you have been a blessing to me in these last 10 years. Okay. Thank you guys. Bye. Hey, thank you for listening to the podcast all the way to the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my website template shop too. Over on elizabethmccravey.com, you'll find Show It website templates that are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you make more money from your website. Maybe your current website is really boring. Maybe it's a challenge to update, and maybe it's even the thing you feel like is holding your business back. Your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers, and that's exactly what my templates do. These templates are designed to be SEO friendly on the back end, not just pretty, and also strategic with all the strategies I teach on the show, and they are easy for you to set up all by yourself. So shop them at elizabethmccravey.com/shop and come join thousands of happy customers using these templates. And as an added perk, you can use the code BBPodcast at checkout to get 10% off your template as a thank you for being part of the podcast fam. Again, that's BB Podcast for 10% off any template over on elizabethmccravey.com. Also, if you loved this episode, leaving a rating and review for the show on wherever you're listening or sharing it with a friend is a great way to support this podcast. Thank you again for listening, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.